My granddaughter called me at 5:47 inches the morning and said, "Grandpa, whatever you do, don't drink the tea she makes you today." I asked why, and her voice cracked like she'd been crying all night. "Please, just trust me. I'll explain everything soon." At 8 a.m., when I sat down at my kitchen table and saw the steaming cup my daughter-in-law had already prepared, I froze. Little did I know that my granddaughter's warning had just saved my life. This story will shake you to your core. Drop a comment below telling me where you're watching from and whether you'd trust a warning that made no sense at the time. The phone's ring cut through the quiet of my bedroom like a knife. At 67, I've learned to sleep light. Comes with the territory of running a vineyard for 4 decades. But this call felt different, the kind that makes your heart pound before you even see the screen. "Hello?" My voice came out rough from sleep. "Grandpa, whatever you do, don't drink the tea she makes you today." Emma's voice trembled through the speaker, tight with a fear I'd never heard from my 24-year-old granddaughter. I sat up in bed, instantly awake. "Emma? Honey, what's wrong? It's not even 6 in the morning. Please, Grandpa. Just trust me. Don't drink anything she gives you. I'll be there by noon. I have to show you something." The line went dead before I could ask another question. I stared at the phone in my weathered hands, trying to make sense of what just happened. Emma had always been the steady one in our family. Graduated top of her nursing class at UT Austin, now working at Hill Country Memorial Hospital. The kind of young woman who thinks before she speaks and never panics over nothing. If she was scared enough to call before dawn with a warning like that, something was seriously wrong. I swung my legs over the side of the bed and looked out the window at Morrison Vineyards. 43 years I'd worked this land in the Texas Hill Country, just outside Fredericksburg. My wife, Patricia, and I had bought it as newlyweds, with nothing but a dream and a small loan from her father. We'd built it into something special. 200 acres of some of the finest Tempranillo and Viognier grapes in the state. A tasting room that brought tourists from Austin and San Antonio every weekend. A legacy worth about $4.2 million, according to the last appraisal. Patricia passed 3 years ago. Cancer. The kind that takes its time, giving you just enough hope before stealing everything. Since then, I've been running the vineyard alone, with help from my son Daniel and his wife Vivian. Vivian. That's who Emma meant. Don't drink the tea she makes you. I shook my head, pushing the thought away. Vivian had been part of our family for 12 years now. She'd held my hand at Patricia's funeral, brought me meals when I couldn't cook for myself, managed the vineyard's books with precision I couldn't match. Surely Emma was overreacting about something. But still, that fear in her voice. I shuffled to the bathroom, splashed water on my face, and made a decision. I'd humor my granddaughter's warning, at least until she arrived to explain herself. When I came downstairs at 7:30, Vivian was already in my kitchen. This wasn't unusual. She'd taken to coming over early since Patricia died, claiming she wanted to make sure I ate a proper breakfast. She stood at the counter in her designer yoga clothes, her blonde hair pulled back in a perfect ponytail, looking every bit the successful businesswoman she portrayed herself to be. "Good morning, Dad," she said with that bright smile that had charmed my son from the moment they met. "I made your favorite, Earl Grey with honey, just how Patricia used to make it." She set a steaming cup on the kitchen table, right in my usual spot. My stomach turned. "Thanks, Vivian. I'll get to it in a minute. Need to check on the irrigation system first. Miguel mentioned a leak yesterday." Something flickered across her face. Disappointment? Irritation? It vanished so quickly I might have imagined it. "Of course. Don't let it get cold, though. I added something special to help with your joints. You mentioned your knees have been bothering you." I nodded and headed out the back door, my heart hammering against my ribs. Vivian had never mentioned anything about my joints before, and the way she'd watched me, waiting for me to drink. What the hell was going on? I spent the next 3 hours finding reasons to stay away from the house. The irrigation leak was real enough, and fixing it gave me time to think. By the time Emma's car pulled into the driveway at 11:45, I'd worked myself into a state of nervous anticipation. She looked terrible, dark circles under her eyes, her usually neat brown hair pulled into a messy bun. She was clutching a manila folder, like it contained state secrets. Inside, she whispered, glancing toward the main house, where Daniel and Vivian lived. "We need to talk where she can't hear us." We went to the wine cellar beneath the tasting room. It was the one place on the property where I knew we'd have complete privacy. Stone walls, 3 feet thick, built in the 1920s by the original German settlers who'd farmed this land. "Emma, you're scaring me. What is this about?" She sat down on an old oak barrel and opened the folder with shaking hands. "Grandpa, I need you to listen to everything before you react. Can you promise me that?" I nodded. 3 weeks ago, a patient came into the ER. Mrs. Dorothy Schultz, 71 years old, from Kerrville. She was presenting with symptoms of chronic arsenic poisoning, tremors, hair loss, kidney problems, confusion. At first, the doctors thought it was natural decline, maybe early dementia. Arsenic poisoning? In this day and age? It's more common than people think, especially in cases of elder abuse. Emma's voice hardened. Mrs. Schultz died 4 days later. But before she passed, she told me something that made my blood run cold. She pulled out a photograph. A woman in her 60s, smiling next to a much younger blonde woman, at what looked like a garden party. "That's Mrs. Schultz on the left. The woman on the right is her daughter-in-law, Karen. Karen Schultz, maiden name Karen Wells." I stared at the photo, not understanding. "I don't know these people, Emma. Look closer at Karen." I squinted at the image. Something about the woman's posture, the tilt of her head, the shape of her smile. A chill ran down my spine. "She looks like Vivian." "That's because Karen Wells and Vivian Wells are sisters." The wine cellar seemed to spin around me. "What?" Emma spread more documents across the barrel. After Mrs. Schultz died, I couldn't stop thinking about what she'd told me. She said Karen had convinced her to sign over power of attorney, promising to help manage her finances. Within 6 months, Karen had transferred the Schultz family ranch into her own name. Then Mrs. Schultz started getting sick. This is insane. Vivian would never. I did research, Grandpa. Spent every free moment for the past 2 weeks digging. Karen Wells married into the Schultz family 8 years ago. Her sister Vivian Wells married Dad 12 years ago. Emma's eyes met mine. Before the Schultz family, there was the Henderson estate in Marble Falls. Before that, the Kowalski farm near Dripping Springs. All of them owned by people over 65. All of them married sons in the family. All of them ended up dead within 2 years of signing over their property. I sank onto a wooden crate, my legs suddenly unable to hold me. "You're telling me my daughter-in-law is some kind of serial killer?" "I'm telling you she's part of a network. Her sister, probably others. They target people with valuable property, marry into families, gain trust, and then..." Emma's voice broke. "I found your name in some files at the county clerk's office, Grandpa. Someone has been requesting copies of your property deeds. Someone filed preliminary paperwork for a conservatorship hearing, claiming you're showing signs of cognitive decline." "A conservatorship? That would give them control of everything. Everything. Your money, your property, your medical decisions. And once they have that control..." She didn't need to finish the sentence. I thought about the tea sitting on my kitchen table, the special something Vivian had added for my joints, the way she'd been hovering lately, mentioning to Daniel that I seemed forgetful, suggesting I might need more help around the vineyard. "She's been building a case," I said slowly, making Daniel think I'm losing my mind. "I went through your medicine cabinet last time I visited. Found this." Emma held up a small plastic bag containing white powder, hidden in your vitamin D supplements. I had a friend in the lab analyze it. Arsenic trioxide. Small doses. Not enough to kill quickly, but enough to cause confusion, memory problems, joint pain. All symptoms that could be mistaken for normal aging. The world I thought I knew crumbled around me. 12 years. 12 years of family dinners, holiday celebrations, birthday parties. All of it a lie. All of it part of some monstrous plan to steal my land and end my life. Does Daniel know? Emma's face crumpled. I don't think so. I think she's fooled him completely. Grandpa, I don't know what to do. If I go to the police with this, she'll know. She might accelerate whatever she's planning. And Dad, Dad loves her. He won't believe me without proof she can't deny. I sat in the cool darkness of the wine cellar, feeling older than my 67 years. But beneath the shock and betrayal, something else was stirring. Something that had kept Morrison Vineyards alive through droughts and floods and economic downturns. Determination. Then we get proof she can't deny, I said. We set a trap. Over the next week, I played the role Vivian expected, the confused old man, slowly declining. I pretended to drink the tea she made, dumping it down the drain when she wasn't looking. I acted forgetful, asked the same questions twice, pretended not to remember conversations, and I watched. Recorded everything on the smartphone Emma had taught me to use. Vivian's visits became more frequent. Her suggestions to Daniel about my mental state became more pointed. She even brought a doctor friend to dinner one night, who asked me questions that I recognized as a cognitive assessment. He's definitely declining, I heard her tell Daniel afterward, when she thought I'd gone to bed. Your father needs professional care. And honestly, honey, this vineyard is too much for him to handle. We should talk to him about transferring management to us. I don't know, Viv. Dad's always been sharp. Maybe he's just tired. Baby, I love your father like he's my own dad. That's why I'm worried. I've seen this before with my aunt. It starts small, then one day they leave the stove on or wander off and get lost. I couldn't live with myself if something happened to him because we didn't act soon enough. She was good. I'll give her that. Her voice dripped with concern, with love, with exactly the right amount of reluctance. If I didn't know what I knew, I would have believed every word. Emma, meanwhile, was building a case. She'd connected with the families of Vivian's previous victims, the Henderson daughter, who'd always suspected something was wrong with her mother's death, the Kowalski grandson, who'd hired a private investigator but ran out of money before finding proof. Together, they were assembling a pattern that stretched back 15 years. But we needed more. We needed Vivian's own words. The opportunity came on a Thursday afternoon. Emma had intercepted a text message on Vivian's phone, one that she'd accidentally left on the kitchen counter. A meeting with someone named Kay at the old Luckenbach dance hall, abandoned since a fire 5 years ago. That's got to be Karen, Emma said. Her sister. They're meeting to plan something. Then I'll be there to listen. Grandpa, no. It's too dangerous. I took my granddaughter's hands in mine. Emma, your grandmother used to say that the Lord protects those who protect themselves. I've spent 67 years building this life. I'm not going to let some snake in designer clothes take it from me. Besides, I smiled grimly, nobody suspects the confused old man. The Luckenbach dance hall sat in a clearing about 5 miles from town, surrounded by live oaks draped in Spanish moss. I arrived an hour early, parking my truck behind a thicket of cedar and hiking in on foot. The building was a shell of its former glory, the roof partially collapsed, the wooden dance floor warped and rotting. I found a hiding spot in the old coat check room, where I could see through a crack in the wall into the main hall. And I waited. Vivian arrived at 7:15, her white Lexus completely out of place in this forgotten corner of the hill country. Karen came 10 minutes later in a black Mercedes. The sisters embraced, like they hadn't seen each other in months. How's our investment progressing? Karen asked, settling onto a dusty bench. Perfectly. The old fool is deteriorating faster than expected. The arsenic is working beautifully, and I've got Daniel convinced his father has dementia. We should be able to file the conservatorship papers within the month. And then, the usual, I'll move him to that memory care facility in San Antonio, the one where Dr. Patterson owes us favors. 6 months, maybe less, and we'll have another tragic case of an elderly man whose mind gave out. Karen laughed, a sound that made my skin crawl. 4.2 million. That's our biggest score yet. Worth 12 years of playing devoted daughter-in-law. God, you have no idea how exhausting it is pretending to care about vineyard yields and wine tastings. Vivian's voice dripped with contempt. That old man talks about his grapes like they're his children. Pathetic. I felt my hands clench into fists, but I stayed still, kept recording. What about the granddaughter? Emma? She's been spending a lot of time around the property lately. She's a nurse, probably just visiting her grandfather. But I'll keep an eye on her. If she becomes a problem, we can handle problems. We've handled them before. The memory of Mrs. Schultz dying alone in a hospital bed flashed through my mind. How many others had there been? How many families destroyed by these women? There's something else, Vivian said, lowering her voice. Daniel's been asking questions about our finances. Noticed some transfers he doesn't recognize. Handle it. I will. But we might need to accelerate the timeline. Once the old man's out of the picture and the property's in our name, I'm thinking we disappear. Start fresh, somewhere new. I'm tired of Texas anyway. What about Daniel? Vivian's laugh was cold as winter. What about him? He served his purpose. Gave me access to the family, legitimized my position. Once the inheritance is secured, he's as disposable as his father. That was enough. More than enough. I stepped out of my hiding place, phone held high, the recording app clearly visible on the screen. Evening, ladies. The sisters spun around, their faces transforming from shock to fury in an instant. You? Vivian hissed. What are you doing here? Listening, recording, getting everything I need to send you both to prison for the rest of your miserable lives. Karen moved toward me, but I held up my other hand, showing the small device Emma had given me. Personal safety alarm. One press and it sends my GPS location to 911, along with an automatic message about an emergency in progress. Sheriff Martinez should be here in about 15 minutes. I suggest we all stay calm until then. Vivian's mask crumbled completely. Gone was the caring daughter-in-law, replaced by something cold and predatory. You can't prove anything. You're a confused old man with dementia. That's what everyone believes. That's what the doctors will testify. Your recording won't mean anything coming from someone who can't remember what day it is. Maybe. But I'm not the only one with evidence. I smiled, feeling Patricia's strength flowing through me. See, the thing about poisoning someone slowly is that it leaves traces. Medical records, lab results. And thanks to my granddaughter, we have samples of your doctored vitamins, along with testimony from the Henderson family, the Kowalski family, and the doctors who treated Dorothy Schultz before she died. Karen grabbed her sister's arm. We need to go. Now. You're not going anywhere. The voice came from the doorway. Sheriff Martinez stepped inside, flanked by 4 deputies and a woman I recognized from photos as the Kerrville District Attorney. Vivian Wells. Karen Wells. You're under arrest for conspiracy to commit murder, elder abuse, and fraud. As they were handcuffed and read their rights, Vivian turned to me one last time. Her eyes were filled with a hatred so pure it was almost beautiful. You think you've won? You have no idea how many people we work with. This isn't over. For you, it is. I met her gaze steadily. You made one mistake, Vivian. You assumed that because I'm 67, I'm stupid. That because I love my family, I'm blind. But the thing about running a vineyard for 40 years is you learn patience. You learn to watch. You learn that the sweetest grapes take the longest to ripen, and the most dangerous pests hide in plain sight. The investigation that followed was larger than anything I could have imagined. Federal agents arrived within days, turning a local elder abuse case into a multi-state RICO investigation. The network Vivian and Karen had built stretched across Texas, New Mexico, and Oklahoma. 17 confirmed victims, over $30 million in stolen assets, 6 corrupt doctors, 2 lawyers, and a state inspector who'd been helping them cover their tracks. Emma became the key witness, her medical records and research forming the backbone of the prosecution's case. The Henderson and Kowalski families finally got answers about their loved ones' deaths, and in a small courtroom in Fredericksburg, I watched as both sisters were sentenced to life without parole. The hardest part wasn't the trial. It was telling Daniel. My son sat at my kitchen table, the same table where Vivian had served me poisoned tea, and listened as I explained what his wife had been planning. I showed him the recordings, the documents, the evidence that painted a picture of a woman he'd never really known. He didn't speak for a long time afterward, just sat there, staring at his hands, trying to reconcile the woman he'd loved for 12 years with the monster she turned out to be. I'm sorry, Dad, he finally said, his voice breaking. I should have seen it. I should have protected you. You couldn't have known, son. She fooled us all. The only reason I found out is because Emma refused to let her suspicions go. You raised a remarkable daughter, Daniel. That's something to be proud of. 6 months later, spring arrived at Morrison Vineyards with the kind of gentle warmth that makes you believe in new beginnings. The Tempranillo vines were budding green, the wildflowers were blooming across the hillsides, and for the first time since Patricia's death, I felt something like peace. Daniel moved back into the main house after the divorce was finalized. He threw himself into vineyard work with a dedication I hadn't seen since he was a teenager, learning operations he'd ignored during his marriage. There was healing in the routine, in the honest labor of tending vines and making wine. Emma visited every weekend, often bringing friends from the hospital. She'd become something of a local hero, the young nurse who'd cracked an elder abuse ring. The hospital promoted her to head of their geriatric care unit, where she implemented new protocols for identifying abuse victims. As for me, I went back to my morning routine. Coffee at 6:30, a walk through the vineyard, whatever the day demanded. But now I appreciate each moment more. The sunrise over the hills, the smell of the cellar, the way the light hits the grapes in late afternoon. These things matter in ways I never fully understood before. I wear Patricia's wedding ring on a chain around my neck now. When the trial was over and the news cameras went away, I sat by her grave and told her everything that happened. I could almost hear her laughing at the image of me hiding in that abandoned dance hall, playing detective at 67. You always said I was stubborn, I told her. Turns out that's not such a bad thing. Some people have asked if I hate Vivian. The truth is, I don't have room for hate anymore. What I feel is something closer to pity. She had everything she needed to build a real life. Intelligence, charm, a family who would have loved her unconditionally. Instead, she chose to destroy others for money she'd never lived to spend. That's the real tragedy. Not what she did to me, but what she did to herself. Looking back on everything, I've learned that God truly works in mysterious ways. When Emma called me that morning with her impossible warning, I couldn't have known it would lead to exposing a network of killers who'd been preying on families like mine for years. But the Lord has a way of using ordinary people to do extraordinary things. If you're watching this and thinking about your own family situation, let me give you some advice. Trust your instincts. When something feels wrong, it usually is. Don't let anyone convince you that your age makes you less capable or less worthy of respect. The years I've lived aren't a liability. They're an asset. Every challenge I've faced, every problem I've solved, every loss I've survived has made me stronger and wiser. And pay attention to the young people in your life. Emma saw what I couldn't see, not because she's smarter than me, but because she wasn't blinded by 12 years of manufactured trust. Sometimes the clearest view comes from outside the situation. To all the grandparents out there watching, your wisdom matters. Your experience matters. Your life has value that no one can take away. If this story touched your heart, please share it with someone who needs to hear it. Subscribe to our channel for more true stories about ordinary people facing extraordinary challenges. And tell me in the comments, what would you have done in my situation? Would you have trusted that early morning warning? Sometimes the hardest thing is also the right thing. And sometimes the greatest act of love is a granddaughter who refuses to stay silent when she sees danger coming for someone she loves.